Police have the ability to use force on people, and they use it a lot.
She's got a knife. Drop it!
Sometimes this force is justified, and other times it isn't. Knowing the difference can be a little tricky, but in general, the answer to the question, how much force can police use, is really dependent on a person's actions. Since police can only respond with force based on what you're doing, each action you do puts you into a category. And that category then defines what police's reaction can be. The first category is called compliant, which, as the name implies, you are listening to what police tell you to do. Since you're already listening, the police can only talk to you and persuade you to continue to comply. And the only reaction to you is verbal persuasion. Verbal persuasion are things like, can I get your license or registration, please? Can you step out of the car for me? Or even, please put your hands behind your back. Even if you're stopped for a more serious crime like murder, as long as you're listening, police can't put their hands on you. The next category is passive resistance. Passive resistance is when you don't listen to what the police are telling you to do. For instance, if police tell you to step out of the car, move away from a scene, or put your hands behind your back, and you don't, your behavior falls under passive resistance. A common misconception is that talking to the police while you're ignoring their instructions doesn't count as you doing something wrong. It does. You might think you're simply explaining your side, but if you continue to go back and forth or slow down what they're trying to do, especially in a tense and urgent situation, then you're technically still ignoring them. Even if you mean well and you're just trying to make your case for why they should let you go, doing this can still be interpreted as passive resistance. So when you don't listen to the police, either subtly, like talking back, or blatantly, like going limp, it elevates the police's reaction to firm grips, which is essentially a grab that is not meant to cause pain, but instead make you do what the police are telling you to do. For example, if they say put your hands behind your back and you don't, they can put them there for you. If they say you can't block a walkway with your protest and you don't listen, they can grab you and move you. The next category is active resistance. Active resistance is when you're trying to evade the police. This could be something like moving your hand away, bracing your body when they go to grab you, pushing police off of you, running away, or even just saying something like,
"You're not putting no handcuffs on me, man."
At this point, the floodgates open, and almost all the police force options are available for them to use. Police can use strikes like punching and kicking, and on top of that, police can use their pepper spray, baton, and even taser. They can also respond with something called compliance techniques, which are holds that are meant to cause pain. The most common one that you see in movies is when a police moves someone's elbow behind their back and up. Keep in mind, the difference between passive and active resistance is very subtle. Going limp is passive resistance, and just tensing up is active resistance. While the difference in what you do is very small, the difference in what police can do is very large. They go from being able to just grab you to almost doing anything to prevent you from getting away. The next category is active aggression. This category is different from active resistance because now you're not on the defensive just trying to evade the police, but instead you're on the offensive and you're trying to actively fight. And this category is not only reserved for people trying to fight the police. If you're about to fight anyone, then you're also considered in active aggression. And how can police respond to this? Well, since pretty much every force option for a cop was unlocked in active resistance, they can't really expand their force options because the only thing left for them to use is their gun. But police don't unlock that yet, since at active aggression, you're only about to cause physical injury to someone, not a serious physical injury. The best way to describe the difference is that a physical injury is something that you can heal from over time and will not cause lasting damage, whereas a serious physical injury is something that is likely to cause permanent damage or even death. For example, serious physical injuries are things like broken bones, stabbings, and shootings. A physical injury, on the other hand, is pretty much everything else, like a black eye, broken nose, bruise, or a cut. Now, generally, if you're attacking someone with just your hands and feet, then you're only likely to cause physical injury, and this puts you in the category of active aggression. But if you use any kind of weapon, then you are bumped up to the highest category, which is active aggression with weapons. And this is when you're likely to cause a serious physical injury or death. Obviously, using a weapon like a gun or a knife would put you in this level, but it is really open to any kind of weapon, like a bat, a stick, screwdriver, or even a chair. Even if some of these things are not the most effective at causing a serious physical injury, if it is likely to cause one, then it still puts you in this category. And once you use a weapon, police now unlock their strongest force option, which is a gun. Keep in mind, you're put into these two categories based on your potential to cause the injuries, not whether or not you've actually caused them. So let's review. If you're listening to police, you are compliant, so they cannot put their hands on you, and the only thing they can do is use verbal persuasion. If you're ignoring police, you are passively resisting, and then they can escalate their actions to firm grips. If you're trying to evade the police, you're now actively resisting, and they can now use strikes like punching and kicking, as well as pepper spray, baton, taser, and compliance techniques. Now, if you're about to fight someone, and that includes anyone, not just the police, then you're put into a higher category, which is active aggression. Even though you're in a higher category, the amount of force police can use on you does not escalate. But police will be able to get away with using these techniques more aggressively because you are fighting. And lastly, if you're fighting anyone, but you're about to cause a serious physical injury, which generally means you're using a weapon, then you're put into the highest category, which is active aggression with weapons, and police can respond with their gun. So this chart outlines the amount of force police can use. And each action that a person does correlates to a specific reaction by the police. But an important thing to note here is that this reaction by the police is the maximum force police can use. But they don't have to use the maximum force. For example, we now know if someone is running away, the maximum force police can respond with is anything here. But they can also use something lower, like firm grips or even verbal persuasion. So police can always respond with a lower or equal force option. But they can never go higher than what is outlined in this chart. But these are general rules, and not everything is clear-cut. The whole scenario has to be taken into consideration. For example, if someone has a knife and they're trying to attack someone else, police can use a gun. But what if they're 50 feet away? What if they're 5 feet away? What if they're 80 years old? What if they're 12 years old? What if they're behind a fence? Your age, distance, demeanor, and any other variable all play a factor into whether an officer's use of force was reasonable or not. So while one incident of a cop using force on someone might be deemed lawful, another scenario that's similar might not be. There is no rulebook that could be created for every scenario that police will encounter because there are too many variables. That is why police are given the freedom to make a call to shoot a person right away or to try verbal persuasion with them first. In addition to this chart, there are some things that police can never ever do. For example, police are not allowed to use any force to get back at you. It doesn't matter if you took police on a high-speed chase or if you're accused of a heinous crime, police are not the judge, jury, and executioner. You are still innocent until proven guilty, so they can't hurt you to teach you a lesson. Also, if someone is rear handcuffed, police can never attack them, even if that person is kicking or even spitting at the police. Because that person is kicking, you might think that would put them in the active aggression category, which means police can respond with these options, but because they're handcuffed, the only way police can respond is with firm grips. Let's look at some examples to really get a good understanding.
Get out of the car now. Get out of the car.
Get your hands up.
Police tell the man to get out of the car and he denies, saying he's in fear of his life. The cop responds with pepper spray. Not justified. In order to see why, we have to start with what the person is doing. And in this scenario, he is not listening. That means he's passively resisting, and the maximum force police can use here is firm grips. So the fact that the officer used pepper spray means he was using too much force and was not justified. Police tell her to get out of the car and she refuses, saying she doesn't think the stop was lawful. And then they break the glass and grab her out. Justified. You can argue in this scenario she's only passively resisting, so police can only use firm grips on her. But just because someone is passively resisting doesn't mean they can barricade themselves and get away with anything. However, as long as she is not physically struggling, the max force they can use on her is still firm grips, which is what they did.
Ram, please. Ram, please. Please, don't do that.
A man moves his hand back and police pull out a taser. Justified. Him moving his hand back is him resisting the arrest, which puts him in the active resistance category. That means police are allowed to use these force options, so a taser is allowed. A man is yelling at a cop and another cop pepper sprays him. Justified. The man looked like he was trying to fight the cop, not just yell at him. So that puts him in the active aggression category, and police can use a pepper spray. Even though he didn't hit the cop yet, you are put in this category based on your potential to cause a physical injury, not whether or not you caused it. A man walks into a precinct with a knife, and police tase him. Justified. Him having a knife means he has the potential to cause a serious physical injury, which means he is in the active aggression with weapons category, and police can respond with a gun. However, this officer chose to go with a lesser option, and that is allowed. A girl runs at another girl with a knife, and the officer shoots. Justified. Here, this girl is about to cause a serious physical injury to someone, so she is in the active aggression with weapons category, and police can respond with a gun. A woman ran away from police and resisted arrest. An officer fires shots at her car to prevent her from fleeing. Not justified. She is running away, which means she is in the active resistance category. So the maximum force options police can use is these things here, not a gun. A 70-year-old man lightly strikes an officer in the chest out of frustration.
To tap the back of his hand on the officer's chest.
The officer responds with compliance techniques. Not justified. On paper, the officer is correct. Because a man put his hands on the officer, it can be argued that he's trying to fight. But when you look at the totality of the circumstances, the man's age, the light tap, and his demeanor, it did not warrant the rough reaction that the officer had. This is a great example of how the whole scenario needs to be looked at. Now that we understand how much force police are allowed to use, the next big question is, what if they go too far? Well, even if the officer is using excessive force, the law says you can't fight back. So what are your options? I made another video that walks you through what you can actually do if police cross that line, and it talks about all improper things police can do, not just using too much force. Check the link out in the description.